The first shot came without warning, a blinding spear of light that split the heavens and left the night bleeding fire. Captain Elias Ward had seen battles before, had fought in the dust rings of Mars and in the cold dark around Europa, but nothing compared to this. Above Earth, the Ver Dominion had arrived in force. Their ships were vast, curved like blades of obsidian, sliding through space with a grace that mocked their brutality. They fell upon the human coalition fleet like predators, tearing through frigates and cruisers with weapons far beyond human design. Every impact lit up the void, and every explosion sent another crew into silence. Ward's ship, the Resolute Dawn, danced among the wreckage, her engines screaming as he forced her to outmaneuver the Dominion's fire. Around him, his crew scrambled, shouting reports, calling for backup, patching wounds into the hull. But the truth rang in all their voices. They were losing. Humanity's proud defense line, stretched thin across orbit, was collapsing. The comms crackled with desperate voices. A frigate ahead of Ward's position took a direct hit. Its hull flared bright and then broke apart, spilling men and women into the void. The sound of their last scream cut through before static swallowed it. "We can't hold them," someone cried over the channel, the voice thick with fear. Ward gritted his teeth, hands gripping the controls. His heart hammered with the weight of it all. He knew they were cornered. Every ship lost was another wound to Earth itself. Yet giving up was not in him. "Then make them pay for every inch," he barked into the comms, his voice steady though his insides trembled. "We fight till nothing's left." His own ship dove through a rain of fire, railguns answering with thunder. Each slug hammered into Dominion armor, each strike buying humanity another heartbeat of survival. Ward lived in those heartbeats, forcing his mind to stay sharp while despair pressed in. Around him, space was a graveyard of drifting metal, the proud flagships of Earth breaking like glass beneath the Dominion's assault. Even as he fought, Ward's thoughts turned heavy. This wasn't just another battle over a mining belt or a colony. This was home. Below them, blue oceans and green continents turned slowly in the dark, unaware that above their heads the war for their very existence was being decided. If the Dominion broke through here, there would be nothing left to shield the billions below. The Coalition had called this Earth's last stand, and as the night deepened with fire, Ward feared it would prove true. Then, just as another Dominion volley slammed into a nearby carrier, another presence arrived. The sky seemed to split again, but this time it was not Earth ships burning. Vast forms entered the field, ships clad in silver and gold, glowing like blades of sunlight in the void. They struck the Dominion flank with power that shook the battlefield. In moments, Dominion formations staggered, their clean advance broken. For the first time in hours, human crews cheered. Ward stared at the new arrivals, his breath catching. He recognized their banners from intelligence files, though he had never seen them with his own eyes. These were not allies, not friends. They were Atrians, warriors of an empire feared across the stars. And leading them, if the markings were true, was no admiral or general, but the Queen herself. For the briefest moment, silence spread in the comms, as if all sides paused to understand what this meant. Ward felt his chest tighten. The Dominion was not the only power humanity feared in the galaxy. Yet here, at the edge of annihilation, another empire had entered the field, and whether salvation or doom followed in their wake, no one yet knew. The Atrians entered the battlefield with the fury of a storm, their ships moving like living blades, sleek and radiant under the glow of distant stars. Their weapons fired beams of burning gold, slicing through Dominion cruisers as if they were made of paper. The human coalition fleet, broken and scattered, steadied at the sight, unsure whether to cheer or hold their breath. Captain Elias Ward gripped the controls of the Resolute Dawn as his sensors filled with Atrian signatures. He had read about them in military briefings and seen scattered holos, tall, scaled beings with eyes like molten suns, said to be bred for war and honor, feared by the Dominion almost as much as by humanity itself. Yet nothing in those files had prepared him for the sheer awe of watching them move, each ship a spear, each maneuver a declaration of power. Then a comm officer's voice broke through his trance. "Captain, an Atrian hail. It's direct. They want you." Ward blinked. Him why him? A moment later, the hologram bloomed inside his cockpit, filling the chamber with golden light. There she stood, taller than a human, armored in obsidian plates trimmed with silver, a crown of living metal humming softly upon her brow. Her scales shimmered like starlight, her presence so commanding that the air itself seemed to weigh heavier. This was her, Queen Zaira, the blooded empress of the outer stars, known by reputation as both destroyer and savior, a ruler who had ended wars with a word and begun others with a glance. Her eyes fixed on Ward as though he alone existed in the vast fleet around them. "You humans," she said, her voice deep and resonant, vibrating through the translator with a strange, almost melodic rhythm, "fight like cornered beasts. You are outnumbered, outgunned, and dying, yet you do not surrender. That pleases me." Ward swallowed, his throat dry, every nerve alive under her gaze. What was he supposed to say to a figure like this? His mind, half fried from exhaustion and adrenaline, offered no grand speech, no words of diplomacy. Instead, words slipped out sharp and unplanned, muttered under his breath as if to himself. "You'd make a cute wife." Silence followed. His crew froze, heads snapping toward him in disbelief. The translator caught the words and carried them across the void, rendering them into Atrian tongue with cruel accuracy. The queen tilted her head, her golden eyes narrowing, not in anger but in stillness, as though the galaxy itself had paused to hear her response. The silence stretched until Ward wished the ship would explode just to end the moment. Then, slowly, her lips curved into the faintest smile, though it looked more like a predator baring its fangs than any human gesture of warmth. Her voice came clear and unshaken. "I accept." Ward's heart slammed in his chest. "Wait, what?" But before he could stammer another word, the hologram dissolved into light and was gone. The comms cut with finality. His bridge crew stared at him, their mouths open, expressions caught between horror and disbelief. One officer broke the silence, her voice trembling. "Captain, did you just propose it?" Ward dragged a hand down his face. "It was a joke," he muttered, but the words sounded hollow even to him. His second-in-command leaned forward, voice tight with panic. "Sir, in Atrian law, a queen's acceptance of a vow is binding. That wasn't a joke to her. That was a contract. You may have just married the alien queen." The bridge went dead silent again, only the hum of systems filling the air. Ward's stomach twisted as the weight of it sank in. He had fought through blood and fire, watched ships burn and men die, and somehow the most dangerous thing he had done all night was open his stupid mouth. The irony was so sharp it almost made him laugh, but the looks on his crew's faces killed any humor. Outside the viewport, the Atrian fleet pressed the Dominion back, scattering them with brutal precision. For the first time since the battle began, Earth had a chance. But as Ward stared into the void, one thought beat like a drum in his head. What have I just done? The news spread faster than light across the fleet. What had begun as a tired mutter from Captain Elias Ward had become the loudest rumor in human history. By the time the last Dominion ship retreated from orbit, every crew in the coalition knew their captain had spoken words that bound the Atrian queen. Some called him a fool, others a genius, but all agreed on one thing: something had shifted. Humanity's fate now hung on a vow no one had meant to make. Ward found himself dragged into the War Council before he could even wash the blood from his face. The chamber was crowded with generals, admirals, and ministers, their voices crashing together like waves in a storm. Some were furious. "You can't just marry her," one shouted, slamming a fist on the table. Another snarled, "Do you understand what you've done? You've tied the survival of Earth to a species we barely know." Others argued in sharp whispers, afraid but uncertain. For the Atrians had sent their own message, formal and clear, broadcast across all channels. The Queen's words struck like thunder. "The vow has been spoken. The Queen accepts. As dowry, the Atrian fleet shall defend humanity." That single promise carried more weight than any treaty signed by diplomats. Ships that had once been enemies now turned their guns alongside Earth's. The Dominion, who had long feared the Atrians, suddenly faced a united front. It should have been cause for celebration. Yet in the War Council no one celebrated. All eyes turned to Ward, the man at the center of the storm. He stood rigid under their gaze, exhaustion heavy on his shoulders, mind still reeling from what had happened. He wanted to tell them it was a mistake, a slip of the tongue, nothing more. But he remembered the Queen's eyes. Steady and unwavering, her voice that carried finality. She had not spoken as if humoring a fool. She had spoken as if sealing fate itself. "I didn't mean it," Ward said finally, his voice rough. "It was a joke. You know that." The room erupted again, voices layered with anger and fear. One general shouted, "Try telling that to her." Another snapped, "Do you think the Atrians understand jokes? Their culture treats vows as sacred. You may as well have carved it into stone." Ward's second-in-command leaned close, whispering in his ear, "Sir, whether you meant it or not doesn't matter anymore. The Queen believes it. Her people believe it, and now the Dominion believes it too." That last truth landed hardest. The Dominion spies had already heard, their ships already broadcasting threats across the stars. To them, this marriage was no union of chance. It was war. If humanity and the Atrians truly joined, Dominion power would crumble. And so they swore it would never happen. Even as the council bickered, reports came in. Dominion fleets were gathering again, regrouping, sharpening their blades for the next strike. This was no ordinary campaign anymore. It had become personal, a matter of pride and dominance. The Dominion could not allow the Queen of Atrians to bind herself to a human. They would rather burn Earth to ash than let such a symbol stand. Ward stared at the table, jaw clenched. He had never asked to be anything more than a soldier, a man trying to keep his crew alive. Yet here he was, thrust into a role he neither wanted nor understood, his words shaping the fate of two species. Around him, voices rose, demanding answers, demanding plans, demanding that he fix what had been broken. He closed his eyes for a moment, drawing a breath that felt like steel. He didn't know what marriage to an alien queen meant. He didn't know how humanity would survive the storm to come. But he knew one thing with certainty: running was not an option. The Dominion would come, and when they did, he would stand as he always had in the fire. The Dominion did not wait long to strike again. Within days, their fleets descended on the moon, determined to cut off Earth's lifeline and choke humanity's resistance before it could grow. The gray surface, already scarred from centuries of mining and outposts, became the new battlefield. From orbit, Ward watched the first waves crash down, huge transports slamming into the dust, unfolding into war machines that stalked across the craters. Lunar bases lit up with defensive fire, railguns spitting iron into the sky. But the Dominion pressed forward with brutal precision. Ward's ship, the Resolute Dawn, led a squadron of fighters into the chaos, engines burning bright as he wove through incoming fire. His orders were clear: hold the moon at all costs. This time, though, humanity did not stand alone. Atrian warships descended beside them, their golden weapons striking the Dominion flanks. Atrian knights leaping into the fray in gleaming armor. It was the first time humans and Atrians had ever fought side by side, two species bound not by treaties or years of trust, but by the careless vow of a tired captain. And yet, against all odds, it worked. In the tunnels of the lunar bases, human marines fought shoulder to shoulder with Atrian warriors, rifles and plasma blades carving paths through Dominion troops. Ward heard the calls over comms, gruff human voices mixing with alien battle cries forming a rhythm of survival and defiance. The Dominion pressed hard, their shock troops advancing in waves, their machines towering over defenses. But humanity was stubborn and Atrians were fierce. Together they pushed back inch by bloody inch. Ward himself fought in the sky, his fighter weaving through firestorms, pulling stunts no Atrian pilot dared attempt. He cut through enemy bombers, his guns roaring, his voice steady over the channel as he barked commands. "Hold the line! Don't let them through! This is our home!" His words echoed through comms, and to his surprise, Atrian captains began to repeat them, their alien voices translating his human defiance into their own tongue. Soon both fleets cried the same rallying words, and the sound alone struck fear into the Dominion. The battle stretched into hours, the moon's surface glowing with fire and ruin. Ward lost count of how many times he should have died, how many times he pushed his ship past the limits. When one Atrian cruiser faltered, he led his squadron to cover it, saving warriors who only days ago had been strangers. When a human bunker was overrun, Atrian knights stormed in to retake it, shouting Ward's rally as though it was their own. Slowly, painfully, the Dominion advance faltered. When dawn finally broke over Earth, its pale light touched a moon littered with wreckage. Dominion bodies lay in craters, their war machines silent. Humanity had not been crushed. The moon still stood, scarred but unbroken. Ward landed his ship on the battered surface, stepping out into dust that smelled of smoke and fire. His body ached, his uniform torn, but he was alive. Waiting for him near the Atrian command post was the Queen herself. She looked untouched by the battle, her armor gleaming even through the ash, her golden eyes locked on him. and for a moment he thought she might smile. "You fight as though you are already my consort," she said, voice low and steady. Perhaps the gods fated this. Ward wiped blood from his mouth, shaking his head. "Or maybe I just don't like losing." Her sharp smile widened. "Neither do I." In that moment, under the broken sky, something unspoken settled between them. What had begun as a joke now carried the weight of fire and survival. And though Ward would not say it aloud, part of him knew. This union, strange and unwanted as it was, had already begun to change the course of war. The victory on the moon gave humanity hope, but that hope did not last long. Scouts soon brought news of something far worse than any fleet they had yet faced. From the dark edges of space, a shadow was moving toward Earth. A vessel so massive it swallowed stars behind it. The Dominion had unleashed their greatest weapon, the World Eater dreadnought. It was not just a ship. It was a fortress the size of a continent, bristling with weapons, its core housing a cannon that could split planets. It moved slowly, but every moment brought it closer to Earth, and no fleet in history had stood against it and lived. In the War Council, fear filled the air like smoke. Generals whispered of evacuation. Admirals spoke of retreat. Ministers argued about saving what colonies they could. Maps flickered on the table, showing the dreadnought's path, a line of death cutting straight for Earth. The Atrian commanders, proud and fierce as they were, admitted even their ships could not match its power. The Queen sat silent, her golden eyes fixed on the projection, while her advisors urged caution. But Elias Ward could not sit silent. He slammed his fist against the table, the sound ringing sharp enough to silence the chamber. "We don't run," he said, voice low but burning. "If that thing reaches Earth, billions will die. Retreat won't save us. Hiding won't save us. We take the fight to it." Some laughed, bitter and weary. "And how do you plan that, Captain?" An admiral snapped. "Do you think your squadron can scratch a fortress?" Ward met his gaze without flinching. "We get close. We hit it where it hurts. We tear it apart from the inside." His words hung heavy, reckless, and impossible, but something in them sparked a fire the others could not ignore. He laid it out with brutal clarity. They would send a strike team into the heart of the dreadnought, slipping past shields no fleet could break. They would plant a warhead in its reactor and blow the monster apart from within. The plan was insane and everyone knew it. But the room fell silent because it was also the only plan they had. Queen Zira rose, her tall frame casting a shadow across the table. "If you go, I go," she declared. Her advisors protested, but she cut them down with a glance. "If the human dies, my honor dies with him. If he triumphs, my people must see it with their own eyes." Ward stared at her, caught between disbelief and grim acceptance. He had not asked for her vow, but it followed him now like a second shadow. Together, they would walk into the jaws of death. The council gave its reluctant approval, though their faces were lined with dread. The mission was prepared in silence, crews working with the weight of finality. Ward walked among his squadron, offering words that were half orders, half farewells. The men and women under his command knew the truth. Most of them would not return, yet not one backed down. They had already fought too long, lost too much. If humanity had to end, they would end fighting. As Ward boarded his fighter, he glanced at the Earth hanging blue and fragile below. He thought of the billions who had no idea how close death now stood. He thought of the promise he had made to himself, to never break when the fight was at its worst. Then he looked at Zira, standing tall beside him, her armor gleaming, her crown humming with power. She was alien, dangerous and proud, yet in her eyes he saw the same fire that burned in his own. They exchanged no words because none were needed. Together, human captain and alien queen launched into the black, leading a fleet into the shadow of the World Eater, knowing they carried not just the fate of Earth, but of two peoples bound by fire and vow. The World Eater filled the stars like a nightmare, its shadow swallowing everything as the fleet drew close. Ward had seen large ships before, but nothing like this. The dreadnought was a world unto itself, an endless wall of black steel bristling with cannons and glowing scars of energy. It moved with the certainty of doom, slow and unstoppable, as though the galaxy itself bent to its will. The resolute Dawn led the strike, flanked by Atrian blade ships and battered human cruisers, each crew knowing the odds were hopeless but flying anyway. The Dominion poured fire upon them, waves of interceptors rising from the dreadnought like a swarm of hornets. But Ward carved through the storm. his hand steady on the controls, his heart iron. Keep tight. Keep moving, don't stop firing. He barked over the comms and the fleet obeyed, following his madness into the jaws of the monster. Queen Zyra's ship flew beside him, its golden hull tearing apart enemy squadrons with elegant, deadly arcs of light. Together they pierced through the shields, slipping into the dreadnought's hangar under a rain of fire. What followed was chaos. Corridors of steel echoing with battle cries as human marines and Atrian knights stormed forward, rifles blazing, plasma blades cutting. The air reeked of burning metal and blood, the deck shaking with every strike of the dreadnought's colossal guns outside. Ward and Zyra fought at the front side by side, back to back, their strange bond forged in fire holding fast. Dominion soldiers came in waves, armored beasts with weapons that could tear men in half, but Ward's fury and Zyra's grace carved a path through them, step by bloody step. Ward was hit, searing pain ripping through his side, but he pressed on, teeth clenched, eyes locked on the path ahead. "Not stopping now," he growled, forcing his legs to move. Zyra roared like a storm, her blade cleaving enemies apart, golden eyes blazing. "Do not dare die before the vow is sealed, human," she shouted, her voice carrying through the din like a war drum. At last they reached the reactor chamber, a vast cathedral of light and power, its heart pulsing with energy enough to tear a world apart. Ward pulled the warhead from his pack, hands shaking, setting the device against the core. Alarms screamed, lights flashed red, Dominion elites flooding the chamber to stop them. Ward shoved Zyra toward the escape pod. "Go," he shouted. "I'll finish it." But she refused, her blade flashing as she stood between him and the tide. "Not without you," she roared, her voice breaking with a fury that felt almost human. The warhead's timer ticked down, seconds slipping away. Ward grinned through blood and pain, forcing himself upright. "Guess we'll see if marriage vows mean till death do us part." Together they fought like demons, every strike fueled by the knowledge that this was the end, one way or another. And then, with the timer nearly gone, they broke through the last line and hurled themselves into the pod, blasting free as the warhead detonated. The dreadnought split apart in a storm of fire, its death lighting the void brighter than dawn. Across the system, fleets paused to watch the impossible, the Dominion's greatest weapon destroyed by those who refused to yield. Cheers shook human ships, Atrian voices raised in wild cries of triumph. Against all reason, against all odds, they had won. Ward lay broken in the pod, bloodied but alive, Zyra beside him, her golden eyes fixed on him not as a queen to a subject, but as something more. Later, when they stood before both fleets, the queen raised his hand high, her voice carrying across the stars. "Let it be known," she declared, "the Dominion is broken. The Atrians are bound to humanity by vow, by victory, by blood." Ward muttered under his breath, too soft for anyone but her to hear. "I was joking." She leaned closer, her lips almost a smile, her eyes fierce as the fire that had carried them through. "I was not." And so the war ended and a new age began, an age born of a careless jest, sealed in fire and carried on the unyielding will of humankind.